Joining us now, managing partner of the Cochran firm in Los Angeles. He is, a longtime civil rights attorney, one of the few who's brought hundreds of civil rights cases literally in this area over his career, over 200 cases, as a matter of fact. He's handled some of LA's most high-profile cases, including Geronimo Gijago Pratt, Reginald Denny, Devin Brown, Taisha Miller, and many, many more. He knows a thing or two about a civil rights trial. Attorney Brian Dunn, good morning.
Thank you so much, Dominique. It is always an honor to come back home to you. Always.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. We always get great information and insight from you. I know you've had at least one eye on this trial while you deal with your current cases. And there's been a lot of talk from a lot of people on this show and just in general that the prosecution did an amazing job. I think there's a feeling of optimism, but I always feel a sense of caution when it comes to these kinds of trials.
Well, I think that that's definitely always wise, Dominique. I mean, the idea of hope for the best and prepare for the worst, I don't know who coined that saying, but it seems like it's always applicable in all situations. But this trial is a little bit different than anything we've seen before. And it's not just that the prosecution put together a really tight case, which they did, but it's also that the court system out there tried to ensure that there was some diversity in the jury. There aren't too many high-profile cases where that has occurred. You have a racially mixed jury. You have a jury from different backgrounds, different walks of life. Majority are women on the jury, which is always good if there is the interest of justice in mind. Because in my experience, and I don't think that it's any different than what the data suggests, is that jurors that are female jurors tend to be better jurors. I'm just going to put it that simple. They're less likely to be swayed by the issues involving, power, masculinity, the importance of the gun, all those kinds of things that create problems sometimes. So I think that there's a lot of reasons for you to be optimistic. I also think that there was a crucial ruling that happened before this trial that most people may not know about, but it concerns the concept of third-degree murder. And third-degree murder is a unique thing. We don't have that in California, but they have that in Minnesota. And basically what that says is that even if the prosecution, for whatever reason, is not able to convince some jurors that this particular officer, Derek Chauvin, had the premeditated intent, or should I just say malice aforethought, all of these things that are attendant to the concept of murderous intent, they are able to prove that he still is guilty of the act of murder by showing that he exposed Mr. Floyd to a situation in which he placed him in a dangerous condition and he had deliberate indifference to his well-being. And it's a little bit less than murder, but it still carries a 25-year sentence. Of course, it's the kind of thing that makes a big difference, because I think that that's probably where the evidence was headed from the very beginning of the trial.
So the jury has the opportunity in this case to convict on any of those three charges.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, the way that it works is, you're absolutely right, Dominique. They are going to be given what is called a verdict form. And the verdict form basically just has a series of questions in plain English. And the first one may be, did Derek Chauvin act with deliberate indifference to the well-being of George Floyd? Did he, for example, have time to premeditate and deliberate? There's all of these different questions that are going to track all of the different murder charges, And the way that the verdict form is set up is, if you answer yes to the question one, you go to the question two, and so on and so forth. And they're designed to basically cover all of the different categories of murder. Now, every verdict form is different in every case, and certainly I can't presume to opine as to what specific questions are going to be on this one. But the jury is going to have an opportunity to say yay or no, yay or nay to every single category of murder that's being charged. But I do think that at its core, the charge of third-degree murder fits this case pretty well.
So if they can convict on any one of those three, then that will be a win for the prosecution. What happened, right? Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this 26 years, though, Don. I think just the fact that he was prosecuted is a win for all of us. I mean, we've been through a lot in Los Angeles concerning this subject and concerning police misconduct, concerning police who kill. I can only think of two cases in the last. I've been practicing 26 years. I can only think of two where there has even been a murder prosecution, and that is so incredibly rare that, looking at it through my lens, Dominique, and again, I've been around. I'm an old grizzly bear at this. I look at the situation in terms of the fact that there was even a prosecution. And I know that might seem crazy that there could not be a prosecution, but we've seen some horrible deaths, horribly cold-blooded killings in L.A., and there wasn't even a thought of a prosecution. So that first step, the way that I'm looking at this, Dominique, that is a victory. Now, everything else is gravy. The way I'm looking at it, Dominique, is that the jury may come back and convict on a higher charge. They may bring back murder too, which requires that in Minnesota that the murder be committed in commission of a felony, which is another subpart of what was the felony. But we are dealing with a time where it seems as though we're going fast forward on the issue of what is one of the uncharted frontiers is the concept of police misconduct and holding law enforcement accountable for the actions that they take in the line of duty that result in death. And that is something that really is brand new in terms of American jurisprudence. So I'm happy just to see it develop. I'm not as emotionally wrapped up in what the outcome is going to be, despite what it may seem odd, but that is the truth, Dominique.
No, I mean, I can see it because you're looking at the big picture. I mean, you're 200 cases plus in. So, of course, each case isn't going to seem like the be-all and end-all to you. I think the one indication of what you're talking about a change in the perception or the consciousness is the killing of Dante Wright. I mean, the fact that cop, former police union president,
I mean, that she was charged right away.
Yeah. Talk about that.
Well, Dominique, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm so sorry.
No, this is kitchen table conversation. It's all good. That's how we do it.
Well, for the benefit of your listeners, what happened in the case was Dante Wright had been, I think he had a warrant, and they were trying to arrest him. And in the process of handcuffing, he broke away and got in the car. The officer shoots into the car. Female officer shoots into the car, and her justification, it kills him. Justification was that she believed that she was going for a taser. And a taser is a non-lethal, considered a non-lethal weapon. But instead she went for a real gun and shot him with the real gun instead. But the significant thing that you brought up, Dominique, and this cannot be underestimated, is that there was a criminal charge that was filed right away. Now, some of the activists are upset that it's not a severe enough charge. Manslaughter was the specific category that fit in this case. But just to conceptualize this, I mean, this is not the first time that some officer has killed someone saying that they thought it was a taser, and in fact, it was a real gun. And in my career, I've had 2 of those cases.
Wow.
And the idea of a criminal prosecution happening that's not even in your throwaway mind. I mean, they didn't even want to pay civilly on one of them because the person was committing a crime. But the idea is they charge right away. And this is just showing that, and it could be just because the spotlight is on Minneapolis right now, but it was a bad shooting. But at the same time, this kind of thing has happened so much without any criminal charges being considered. It's a pretty major development. Yeah, there was no threat, but at the same time, I could probably point to you in the time that we're on this call, 50 cases that are worse than that one. 50, Dominique. And there was no thought of a criminal charge.
So that in itself represents progress. I was honestly a bit surprised that they charged so quickly, that the police chief and the officer both stepped down. I actually was kind of surprised by that.
I was too, but at the same time, I guess the wheels of justice they've been stagnant for so long. Once they put the STP oil in, they just started moving real fast. I don't know what happened, Dominique. But.
Yeah. Well, okay, so there is still a chance. Everyone keeps pointing out that it really only takes one juror who believes something the defense said, and they get, the officer gets acquitted. No consequences. What are the options?
It's not acquitted. It's different than acquitted. And I'm sorry, but I just I wanted to clarify the difference between.
No, please do. Yeah.
What happened? Okay, so if there is a holdout juror or 2, what that basically means is that the trial ends in a mistrial. Now, a mistrial basically is a do-over. It's like we're right back to where we were a couple of months ago before the trial happened.
Is that the same as a hung jury?
Totally. Yeah, hung jury will be a hung jury will result in a mistrial. An acquittal means a not guilty. Acquittal means that he is not convicted of murder, which is the same thing as found guilty. Yeah,
right. Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah, and the acquittal means that he is free of the charge. He could still face federal charges. That exact thing happened in the Rodney King situation. But a hung jury can be caused by one or more jurors. But that is not necessarily a big victory for the defense. And let me explain that to you. Because I've been in the situation before where I've been representing some young men who have had jurors that have not been able to reach a verdict. That does not mean that the charges are going to be dropped by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, most of the time, they're going to charge the person again. And this is a case where, sure, they're going to try the case again. And because the eyes of the world and the nation are watching this, I think that the chance of a successive prosecution in the event that there is an acquittal probably pretty high, Dominique. But the idea is folks seem to have a mechanical response to certain contingencies, like it will be a loss if there is a holdout juror or 2, or it will be a bad thing, or he will win, or it will be a victory for the forces of injustice. And it's so much more complex than that, and the analysis should be governed by a few things. Like, number one, this is a somewhat unprecedented situation in this particular county with an officer being charged with like this. And the second thing is, even if there is, this happened in Walter Scott case. I don't know if was it Walter Scott or was that his name? I'm going to try to see if I can get it while I'm
Walter
on the
Scott,
phone.
But I remember that case. That was the guy who was running away, and the cop was like a trainee or something like that. Yeah. Yeah,
but what happened in that case was the officer shot him and killed him while he was running away, And then he went back and got his taser and put the taser next to the body and said that he was going for my taser. It was a complete cover-up. It was one of the most egregious cases of just a murder. But the officer didn't realize that there was a person standing in the corner that was videotaping the whole thing. So it was about one of the clearest cases you could ever imagine of not only a murder, but a murder and a cover-up of a murder. These cell phones are huge. But the idea, Dominique, is that case had this exact thing happen. There was a juror that held out, and it was a complete case of juror. He was not honoring his duty as a juror, and he even said it flagrantly. He said it. I can't find against a police officer. I just can't do it. Now, what that means is he should have never been on that jury in the first place. But that particular defendant officer ended up pleading guilty after that. And he got like I'll have to check this, but maybe some of you folks that are on Google could check it. He got a big sentence. I mean, he got the equivalent almost of what his sentence would have been had he been convicted. So it wasn't as if there was a victory that was obtained in the long run, as a result of this holdout juror. And I think that folks need to kind of understand that. I mean, when you're representing criminal defendants, which is a situation I find myself in quite often, if you have a hung jury, what they're going to want to know is how did it hang? And if it's just one person out of 12, then you're right back in the jackpot. You're right back where you were. Now, if it hangs like where there's, say, 9 or more that are favoring acquittal, because they do account and see how everybody wanted to vote. If you're 9 or higher, 10 or higher, that means they're probably not going to recharge them, or you can get the charge reduced to a misdemeanor. So something that'll be like really a victory. But the idea that one holdout juror can thwart the wheels of justice, it doesn't work.
It's really not quite
people
like
in jail all the time. Yeah.
Right, so it's really not quite like the Senate. It's a little bit better than the U.S. Senate. So I am my folks on Google, and what I'm seeing is 20 years that he was sentenced.
Yeah, and okay. What was the guy's name, just for my edification? The
Slager.
Slager.
Yeah, Officer Slager was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Yeah, with the judge determining the underlying offense was second-degree murder, which is interesting, as you say, because that was Michael Slager, is the former officer. Michael,
thank you so much, Dominique. Yeah, and so that's kind of like it was. It turned out being, the same result. But the law is like that a lot, Dominique. It's not like you see on TV. Mm-hmm. Things sometimes come around like it's like you get the result that you wanted later in a different form, but it's the same basic thing that you wanted in the first place. And that's a lot of how our law works, especially in criminal law. Unfortunately, all too often, when I'm representing people of color, when I'm representing African Americans, Latino, then they'll prosecute you again, even if it's, say, 8-4 acquittal, they'll still do it.
Wow.
Just to do it. I mean, because just to roll the dice on your guy. And the thing that is so unique about this case is that everybody's watching. And the way that injustice happens is it happens in the dark. The way that all of the things that create the system of mass incarceration, all of the things that create the affirmation of the code of silence over and over again, all of those judicial mechanisms that result in just extreme human rights violations, they happen when nobody's looking. And the way that most people get processed through the criminal courts is there is nobody else there. I mean, most criminal trials that I have, when it ends, there's maybe 4 people in the courtroom. Nobody from the LA Times cares. Mm-hmm, and because this is a situation where everybody's looking at it, it creates the impression that the right thing should happen and the right thing will happen, and that the prosecution are good guys and that they're going to do, but it's not always like that. That's the point I'm trying to say.
Yeah, interesting. And I think we have to know what to look for. I can't tell you how many analysis I've seen on major news channels where they're saying exactly what you just debunked, which is that if one juror holds out, that is a victory for the defense. And
not at all.
As the community watches and reacts, I think we have to, it's interesting to know what the options are. When we get back, I want to ask you what are the options? Yeah. Go ahead.
Let me just give you one caveat. If there's something in Minnesota that is totally different than every other state that I don't know about,
I doubt that.
Then I would stand correct. But it seems like now that a mistrial just means like it never happened.